Hello, squirrel listeners. This eye. I think I got an eyelash in there. Oh my gosh. I've been weeping for an hour trying splashing water up in there and all that stuff. I may have to read with one eye. And that was probably my thumbnail. Well, we get a chuckle out of those thumbnails, don't we? Oh, this is almost, well, not really. I started to say right next to having a toothache, but toothache and stomach aches are the worst. And it's got me crying to my nose. It's just an eyelash. Okay, chapter 6. I wended my way to the graveyard this evening, wrote Anne to Gilbert after she got home. I think wend your way, or wind, is W-E-N-D, is a lovely phrase, and I work it in whenever I can. It sounds funny to say I enjoyed my stroll in the graveyard, but I really did. Miss Cordelow's stories were so funny. Comedy and tragedy are so mixed up in life, Gilbert. The only thing that haunts me is that tale of the two who lived together for 50 years and hated each other all that time. I can't believe they really did. Somebody has said that hate is only love that has missed its way. I feel sure that under the hatred they really loved each other, just as I really loved you all those years I thought I hated you, and I think death would show it to them. I'm glad I found out in life, and I have found out there are some decent Pringles. Dead ones. Last night when I went down late for a drink of water, I found Aunt Kate buttermilking her face in the pantry. She asked me not to tell Chatty she would think it so silly. I promised I wouldn't. Elizabeth still comes for the milk, though the woman is pretty well over her bronchitis. I wonder they let her, especially since old Mrs. Campbell is a Pringle. Last Saturday night, Elizabeth, she was Betty that night, I think, ran in singing when she left me, and I distinctly heard the woman say to her at the porch door, "It's too near the Sabbath for you to be singing that song." And I'm sure that woman would prevent Elizabeth from singing on any day if she could. Elizabeth had on a new dress that night, a dark wine color. They do dress her nicely. And she said wistfully, "I thought I looked a little bit pretty when I put it on tonight, Miss Shirley, and I wished Father could see me. Of course he will see me in tomorrow, but it sometimes seems so slow in coming. I wish we could hurry time a bit, Miss Shirley. Now, dearest, I must work out some geometrical exercises. Geometry exercises have taken the place of what Rebecca calls my literary efforts. The specter that haunts my daily path now is the dread of an exercise popping up in class that I can't do. And what would the Pringles say then? What would the Pringles say then?" Meanwhile, as you love me and the cat tribe, pray for a poor, broken-hearted, ill-used Thomas cat. A mouse ran over Rebecca Dew's foot in the pantry the other day, and she has fumed ever since. That cat does nothing but eat and sleep and let mice overrun everything. This is the last straw. So she chivies him from pillar to post, rounds him off his favorite cushion, and I know, for I caught her at it, assist him none too gently with her foot when she lets him out. Oh my gosh, y'all. That is all of chapter 6. So we'll read chapter 7, or start. Oh, come on, eyeball. Come out. Come out, foreign particle. Open my eyes, so maybe that'll help, but it hurts. Okay, one Friday evening at the end of a mild sunny December day, Anne went out to Lowville to attend a turkey supper. Wilfred Bruce's home was in Lowville, where he lived with an uncle, and had asked her shyly if she would go out with him after school, go to the turkey supper in the church, and spend Saturday at his home. Anne agreed, hoping that she might be able to influence the uncle to let Wilfred keep on going to high school. Wilfred was afraid that he would not be able to go back after New Year. He was a clever, ambitious boy, and Anne felt a special interest in him. It could not be said that she enjoyed her visit overmuch, except in the pleasure it gave Wilfred. His uncle and aunt were a rather odd and uncouth pair. Saturday morning was windy and dark, with showers of snow, and at first Anne wondered how she was going to put in the day. She felt tired and sleepy after the late hours of the turkey supper. Wilfred had to help thrash, and there was not even a book in sight. Then she thought of the battered old seaman's chest she had seen in the back of the hall upstairs, and recalled Mrs. Stanton's request. Mrs. Stanton was writing a history of Prince County, and had asked Anne if she knew of or could find any old diaries or documents that might be helpful. The Pringles, of course, have lots that I could use, she told Anne, but I can't ask them. You know the Pringles and Stantons have never been friends. I can't ask them either, unfortunately, said Anne. Oh, I'm not expecting you to. All I want is for you to keep your eyes open when you're visiting round in other people's homes. And if you find or hear of any old diaries or maps or anything like that, try to get the loan of them for me. You've no idea what interesting things I found in old diaries, little bits of real life that make the old pioneers alive again, or live again. I want to get things like that for my book, as well as statistics and genealogy tables. Anne asked Mrs. Bryce if they had any such old records. Mrs. Bryce shook her head. Ow. Ah. I thought this was coming out, but I just got a brand new stab in the eyeball. Wait a minute, y'all. I thought it was getting better. That's why I came on to go ahead and read, but shoot. Ooh. I'm going to splash some water in it again when I get done reading. Sorry, it makes my nose run. Let's see. And asked Mrs. Bryce if they had any such old records. Mrs. Bryce shook her head. Not as I knows on, in course, brightening up. There's old Uncle Andy's chest up there. There might be something in it. He used to sail with old Captain Abraham Pringle. I'll go and ask Duncan if he can root in it. Duncan sent word back that she could root in it all she liked, and if she found any documents, she could have them. He'd been meaning to burn the whole contents anyway and take the chest for a toolbox. Anne accordingly rooted, but all she found was an old yellow diary or log, which Andy Bruce seemed to have kept all through his years at sea. Anne beguiled the stormy afternoon away by reading it with interest and amusement. Andy was learned in sea lore and had gone on many voyages with Captain Abraham Pringle, whom he evidently admired immensely. The diary was full of ill-spelled, ungrammatical tributes to the captain's courage and resourcefulness, especially in one wild enterprise of beating round the Horn. But his admiration had not, it seemed, extended to Abraham's brother Myram, who was also a captain, but of a different ship. Up to Myram Pringle's tonight. His wife made him mad, and he up and throwed a glass of water in her face. Myram is home. His ship has burned, and they took to the boats, nearly starved. In the end, they ate up Jonas Silkkirk, who had shot himself. Ooh! They lived on him till the Mary G picked them up. Myram told me this himself. Seemed to think it a good joke. Ooh, God. Cannibalism. Anne shivered over this last entry, which seemed all the more horrifying for Andy's unimpassioned statement of the grim facts. Then she fell into a reverie. There was nothing in the book that could be of any use to Mrs. Stanton, but wouldn't Miss Sarah and Miss Ellen be interested in it, since it contained so much about their adored old father? Suppose she sent it to them. Duncan Bryce had said she could do as she liked with it. No, she wouldn't. Why would she try to please them or cater to their absurd pride, which was great enough now without any more food? They had set themselves to drive her out of the school, and they were succeeding. They and their clan had beaten her. Wilfred took her back to Windy Poplars that evening, both of them feeling happy. Anne had talked Duncan Bryce into letting Wilfred finish out his year in high school. Then I'll manage Queens for a year, and after that teach and educate myself, said Wilfred. How can I ever repay you, Miss Shirley? Uncle wouldn't have listened to anyone else, but he likes you. He said to me out in the barn, red-haired women could always do what they liked with me. But I don't think it was your hair, Miss Shirley, although it is beautiful. It was just you. At 2 o'clock that night, Anne woke up and decided that she would send Andy Bryce's diary to Maplehurst. After all, she had a bit of liking for the old ladies, and they had so little to make life warm, only their pride in their father. At 3 she woke again and decided she wouldn't. Miss Sarah pretending to be deaf, indeed. At 4 she was in the Swithers again. Finally she determined she would send it to them. She wouldn't be petty. Anne had a horror of being petty like the Pies, P-Y-E-S. Having settled this, Anne went to sleep for keeps, thinking how lovely it was to wake up in the night and hear the first snowstorm of the winter around your tower, and then snuggle down in your blankets and drift into dreamland again. Monday morning she wrapped up the old diary carefully and sent it to Miss Sarah with a little note. Dear Miss Pringle, I wonder if you would be interested in this old diary. Mr. Bryce gave it to me from Mrs. Stanton, who is writing a history of the county, but I don't think it would be of any use to her, and I thought you might like to have it. Yours sincerely, Anne Shirley. That's a horribly stiff note, thought Anne, but I can't write naturally to them, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised if they sent it haughtily back to me. In the fine blue of the early winter evening, Rebecca Dew got the shock of her life. The Maplehurst carriage drove along Spook's Lane over the powdery snow and stopped in front of the gate. Miss Ellen got out of it, and then, to everyone's amazement, Miss Sarah, who had not left Maplehurst for 10 years. They're coming to the front door, gasped Rebecca Dew, panic-stricken. Where else would a Pringle come to? Asked Aunt Kate. Of course, but it sticks, said Rebecca tragically. It does stick. You know it does. It hasn't been opened since we house-cleaned last spring. This is the last straw. The front door did stick, but Rebecca Dew wrenched it open with desperate violence and showed the Maplehurst ladies into the parlor. Thank heavens we'd had a fire in it today, she thought, and all I hope is that that cat hasn't haired up the sofa. If Sarah Pringle got cat hairs on her dress in our parlor. Rebecca Dew dared not imagine the consequences. She called Anne from the tower room, Miss Sarah having asked if Miss Shirley were in, and then betook herself to the kitchen, half mad with curiosity as to what on earth was bringing the old Pringle girls to see Miss Shirley. "If there's any more persecution in the wind," said Rebecca Dew darkly. Anne herself descended with considerable trepidation. Had they come to return the diary with icy scorn? It was little wrinkled and flexible Miss Sarah who rose and spoke without preamble when Sarah entered the room. "We have come to capitulate," she said bitterly. "We can do nothing else. Of course you knew that when you found that scandalous entry about poor Uncle Myram. It wasn't true. It couldn't be true. Uncle Myram was just taking a rise out of Andy Bryce. Andy was so credulous, but everybody outside of our family would be glad to believe it. You knew it would make us all a laughing stock, and worse. Of course you are clever. Very clever. We admit that. Jen will apologize and behave herself in future. I, Sarah Pringle, assure you of that. If you will only promise not to tell Mrs. Stanton, not to tell anyone, we will do anything. Anything." Oh, she's got him over a barrel. Miss Sarah wrung her fine lace handkerchief in her little blue-veined hand. She was literally trembling. And stared in amazement and horror. The poor old darlings, they thought she had been threatening them. "Oh, you've misunderstood me dreadfully," she exclaimed, taking Miss Sarah's poor piteous hands. I never dreamed you would think I was trying to... Oh, well, it was just because I thought you would like to have all those interesting details about your splendid father. I never dreamed of showing or telling that other little item to anyone. I didn't think it was of the least importance, and I never will." There was a moment's silence. Then Miss Sarah freed her hands gently, put her handkerchief to her eyes, and sat down, with a faint blush on her fine wrinkled face. We have misunderstood you, my dear, and we've been abominable to you. Will you forgive us?" Half an hour later, a half hour which nearly was the death of Rebecca Dew, the Mrs. Pringles went away. It had been a half hour of friendly chat and discussion about the non-combustible items of Andy's diary. At the front door, Miss Sarah, who had not the least trouble with her hearing during the interview, turned back for a moment and took a bit of paper covered with very fine, sharp writing from her reticule. "I had almost forgotten we promised Mrs. McLean our recipe for a pound cake some time ago. Perhaps you wouldn't mind handing it to her and telling her the sweating process is very important. Quite indispensable, indeed. Ellen, your bonnet is slightly over one ear. You had better adjust it before we leave. We were somewhat agitated while dressing." Anne told the widows and Rebecca Dew that she had given Andy Bryce's old diary to the ladies of Maplehurst, and that they had come to thank her for it. With this explanation, they had to be contented, although Rebecca Dew always felt there was more behind it than that, much more. Gratitude for an old faded tobacco-stained diary would never have brought Sarah Pringle to the front door of Windy Poplars. Miss Shirley was deep, very deep. "I'm going to open that front door once a day after this," vowed Rebecca, just to keep it in practice. I all but went over flat when it did give way. Well, we've got the recipe for the pound cake anyway. 36 eggs. My gosh. If you'd dispose of that cat and let me keep hens, we might be able to afford it once a year. Oh my gosh, what a cake. It better be a big one. That's ridiculous. Whereupon Rebecca Dew marched to the kitchen and got square with fate by giving that cat milk when she knew he wanted liver. The Shirley Pringle feud was over. Nobody outside of the Pringles ever knew why, but Summerside people understood that Miss Shirley, single-handed, had in some mysterious way routed the whole clan, who ate out of her hand from then on. Jen came back to school the next day and apologized meekly to Anne before the whole room. She was a model pupil thereafter, and every Pringle student followed her lead. As for the adult Pringles, their antagonism vanished like mist before the sun. There were no more complaints regarding discipline or homework. No more of the fine, subtle snubs characteristic of the ilk. They fairly fell over one another trying to be nice to Anne. No dance or skating party was, complete without her, for although the fatal diary had been committed to the flames by Miss Sarah herself, memory was memory, and Miss Shirley had a tale to tell if she chose to tell it. It would never do to have that nosy Miss Stanton know that Captain Myron Pringle had been a cannibal. Hey, poor Jonas. Oh my goodness, so sorry about the eye, y'all. That's all. So I read 2 whole chapters, 2 short ones, in under 23 minutes. What? So we read 6 and 7. Yay. Sorry, I'm sure this eye will get better. I'll keep splashing water in it. Y'all have a good day. And we have live at 5. Woohoo! Live at 5. Tea with GrannyDee. I hope to see you then. And as always, be sweet. Don't be ugly. Love y'all. Bye-bye.